Hi there and welcome back to another episode at Station Road. Now today we're actually going to look at the results from last week's video in regards to which project I should move on to next. So first things first, I thought I'd just like to say a big massive thank you to all of those who shared their input and also voted on the poll. Now there was a fantastic amount of feedback and comments in the previous video, and all shared their views and ideas on which project I should move on to first, and they were actually a mixed bag. Some wanted project A, some wanted project B, and they all had their very valid reasons for doing so. Now that brings me to the view I have on model railroading, and there is really no right or wrong way to model. There is actually only your way to model, and of course in this situation it's my way, of course. So let's take a look at the results and see what the outcome is. So from the poll, there was actually only 177 votes, so that's not a huge amount, but still it was absolutely fantastic, and I'm forever grateful for those who did vote. So from that 177 votes, we have some results in. Now 33% voted for project A and 67% voted for project B. So it wasn't really actually a tight race. We do seem to have a clear winner, and of course that's project B. So project B it is, and this is the one that I'll be continuing on with next. Now I will say, and this was also in some comments in the previous video, that I will actually supplement project B with project A. So when there comes times within project B that I need to take a break from that, then I might work on a small component on project A. So project A is not fully parked, it's just in a temporary hold situation, and I can pick that up throughout project B. Kind of sounds confusing. So I think what we'll do now is we'll just take a quick look at project B, and I'll go into just a little bit more detail about what that involves. So as was described briefly in the project options from the previous video, this is the area that is about to undergo some serious modifications. So ultimately the main objective really is to elevate this section slightly, and that of course has been spurred on by creating a better clearance for this track underneath. So if we take a closer look at the particular area, and I'll just superimpose a highlighted section that indicates where I'm essentially going to cut out and replace this particular area of baseboard. So in the lower part of the image you'll see where the division is actually between two sets of track, and the track next to the platform of course will remain as is, and then the tracks that are part of the goods yard will actually be elevated up. So it's that point there where I'll actually do the break in the change of baseboard, and it'll be a case of cutting through what is existing in the baseboard and removing pretty much everything right back to the shops. So one of the plans of course with this area here is not only sort of raising this particular area up, including these buildings and so forth, is to also actually shift some of this stuff along. So for example, this does actually come out at the moment, and the idea is I'm actually going to move these shops further along this way, and that will essentially allow me to reinstate this track that's in the cobblestone area, and I'm not quite sure whether you're going to see that. It's just in here, and that will mean that I've got an easier curve coming out around here to join on with an additional siding. So the goods shed, of course, will have to be separated from this section of baseboard, and we've got wiring in here, and I may have to actually just pull up this whole lot. So it's quite a ramshackle, almost Franken-style construction here, and it'll be good to actually just tidy this all up. So it may be a bit tricky for me to remove these houses off this baseboard. We'll see how we go. So my thoughts are that if this goes this way, potentially the goods shed will come further down towards this end, and maybe the cattle dock will actually come down towards this end, but it's not completely finalized yet. So that's the plan there, and then of course all of these will be elevated up. So this will rise up, that'll be slightly higher, this is all going to be slightly higher, and essentially what I'm really looking at is it's not going to be the height of this bit of road that is here. There's still going to be a slight drop down from this road, but I'm looking at raising this by roughly, well, exactly by 24 mils, because that is the thickness of the extrusion or timber that I'm actually planning on using. So I'm essentially going to put this timber batten in underneath to elevate this up. And the other plan too is that I will actually assemble this as an entire lift out section, so this whole piece can actually come up. And once again, as I've always said in the past, it's great having lift out sections because you can take it inside, you can work on it on cold days, and you can work it on super hot days when the garage just gets too hot in here. So if we take a look down here at this scene, this is where the entry point is into the current yard, and we've got the point that is just back here. Now I'm going to leave this point where it is and leave this entry point through here, but of course what's going to happen is from this point here it's going to be remaining at this level, and then it'll slowly climb up to 24 millimeters higher than what it currently is. Now I did a incline calculation on this, and really sort of depending on how far I can actually push this yard back a little bit, I'm going to get between a 2 and a 2.5% incline coming up here, which is not too bad. I mean, it could be worse. It's still not ideal. I mean, it's certainly fine in terms of locomotives being able to bring up short rakes of wagons and things like that, but it's possibly a little bit on the steep side in terms of visually, like it just might look a little bit too far-fetched, but nevertheless it's going to be acceptable for pretty much all my locomotives for getting up into this area. So that will mean that this whole area here up till this point here will be at the higher level, and then of course this will be coming up an incline. So you could almost imagine that this will be sort of a very subtle rise or hill coming up, and then this track will be cut into the side of it as it works its way up around. And I think I may continue that right through into here, because I've got to consider what's going to happen beyond this point and in here. So a thought came to mind, and this was once again an idea that one of my subscribers or viewers had commented on, and that was about possibly incorporating a dockyard into the layout. Now I never thought I'd really possibly consider such a thing, because I thought, well, there's just so much going on in this layout that I thought if I add more stuff it's just going to become insane. But in saying that, I haven't really worked out what I'm doing here yet, and I'm almost wondering whether I could have a siding that comes off from this cobblestone siding that's in here, and possibly, if there's room, you know, if this is back here, then do I have another siding that comes back this way and comes out into this open area and have a dock in here with a boat and some warehouses? So it's a thought, and thank you to the person that presented that idea. I sort of kind of thought about it, and I thought maybe there is some potential in this area here for a dock. So obviously the first video that will come up in this series will actually be dismantling what I've actually got here and basically trying to salvage these buildings as best as I possibly can without causing any damage, and then lifting up this baseboard. So I guess it's one of those dreaded situations in some respects that I've spent quite a bit of time working on, particularly this area here where there was the cobblestone and this entranceway and things, and I was really actually quite happy with that. And of course then I had to hack into that, and that destroyed that. So there's a sort of a certain amount of, I guess, reluctance to having to tear this up, but I've got to look at it in the bigger picture and look at it from in terms of how it's going to look in the future. So, you know, initially, yes, I really don't want to sort of have to bust this up, for example, but I'm going to have to make it all work. So there we have it. That is a sort of a rough guide or outline to what is planned in this area. And probably one of the other things that I do need to mention also is that once I've actually completed the area, and in particular the track work for this slightly raised area, is I will be installing some end-to-end train automation for that third line. So that will actually control the siding by the platform and also the goods yard, and then that leads around the third track all the way around into the branch line station. So it'll be good to actually get that up and running, and then I can actually have some DMUs or even some small goods trains that will automatically trundle back and forth on this end-to-end section. So I think that pretty much covers it for this video. Obviously the first video in the Project B series will be coming up in the next few weeks. Now I'd just like to mention at this point also that I have just put up a video that is sort of an update on the Accurascale Class 55 Deltic, and this video sort of relates to the DCC fitting. And for anyone who watched the review that I did on the Class 55 Deltic, there was some rather peculiar issues with the DCC chips that I tried in the locomotive, and my conclusion was that I really needed to get myself a lock pilot decoder as Accurascale recommends. So basically this video covers that. The lock pilot decoder had turned up, and I installed that, and I was able to access all the lighting functions. So there's a link up in the top corner for that video as well. So I'll sign off for now. Do take care, look after yourselves, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will catch you next time. Bye for now.